call the meeting to order. Will you call roll?
Yes. Chair Willis, Vice Chair Pease, absent. Board Member Bauer,
Present.
Board Member Eggleston Sislovich,
Present.
Board Member Henrik,
Present.
Board Member McKinnon, yeah. Board Member McKinnon, I see that you're muted. Could you please unmute yourself?
Present.
Thank you. Board Member Weimer,
Here.
we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting is being recorded. Sorry. Sorry.
So do we have preliminary comments before the meeting, or can we go right into oral communications? Amy?
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to set up my computer.
Okay,
You're
but, well,
welcome
sorry.
to-
Are we done? We don't need to
Yeah,
do any
I'm
of
not
that.
looking at the agenda, so if it says whatever
Okay,
it says first.
oral communications. Oh, wait,
Chair.
adoption.
Yeah, Chair Willis, I'd like to move to adopt the resolution authorizing use of teleconferencing for Historic Resources Board.
Thank you. And a second,
I second.
and all in favor, we can do this with voice vote?
Board Member Bauer,
Oh,
Yes.
Board Member Eggleston Sislovich,
Yes.
Board Member Henrik, Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pease, absent. Chair Willis,
yes.
Board Member Weimer. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. And oral communications, do we have anybody from the public who'd like to speak?
Yes, we have one attendee who would like to speak. For teleconferencing resolution, video, remote. Our first speaker is Von Cannell. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
Yes, hi. That video here. I was looking sure on my video so you can see where I am.
Oh, the attendees are not able to share their videos.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, well, I'm Will Von Cannell. I'm First Vice Commander of American Legion Post 375 and Secretary of the United Veterans Council of Palo Alto. UCOPA, this is our acronym, was incorporated in 1937 to join all the various veterans associations that were in the Veterans Memorial Building. And we persisted this till this time. In 1981, since 1981, we've been in the veterans area of the building. So we know the building very well. And in our conception of the Veteran Memorial Building's aesthetic and cultural heritage, that the memorial dedications are integral to the building. It's unclear, however, if HRB considers the veteran and memorial dedication to be in its purview. In reviewing the municipal code, the HRB has criteria for designation of historic structures and sites. They enumerate criteria that it appears that veteran and memorial dedications could qualify for. But our question is, does HRB consider these veteran and memorial dedications to qualify for the code's criteria for designation and thus come under HRB's protection? Are these dedications separate from the structure and site's aesthetic and cultural heritage and some other agency's responsibility? In either case, UCOPA requests HRB clarify the role of veterans and memorial dedications in the criteria for designation. So I've given enclosed materials. Did you get that? An attachment to the email I sent?
Yes,
Okay, good. And as they show, the veterans and memorial dedications abound at the hostess house. They're foundational to it. For example, the dedication ceremony for the community house occurred on Armistice Day 1919, 1 year after the end of World War I, or at the end of a parade where they dedicated the building. And they put up a plaque which is still today by the entrance to the door. This community house is dedicated to the spirit of willing sacrifice with which the young men of the community answered the call of the Great War, in the hope that it may perpetuate these ideals of fellowship and service. So the founders of the building have told us, what their purpose was for the building, and it had a memorial intent. It is the city of Palo Alto's First World War memorial. So we believe that these, the words on the plaque, the other memorials at the building contribute to the site's aesthetic and cultural heritage, and thus should be protected by the HRB. We don't know if they are protected or they're not, and so we seek clarification from HRB whether the HRB considers these memorials and dedications to be protected as much as the other as qualities of these buildings. So I was hoping to have some sort of clarification action from the HRB.
thank you for bringing us to our attention. And we have been looking into it, and we will try and get back to you with what we know.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Shank.
Good morning, John Shank of Thwaites Brothers. I'm here for the other item. But one thing I thought I'd bring to your attention, as I was on a call last night with some planners are working on a group that they're doing research, I guess, within the community to get back to council on what should be done with the interim moratorium on in lieu parking fees for above ground floor spaces in the downtown. And one of the things I brought up with that group was that by not allowing in lieu fees to be paid for the addition of space, if we were to reconfigure a building today that has some second floor space or space that would be considered second floor, it would trigger a parking requirement. And in our downtown, most of the properties are so small that building underground private garages are functionally impossible. And even if one would argue that it would be so ungodly expensive, you would never do it. And what that does to TDRs is make them invaluable. Invaluable, is that right? Have no value because you can't use them. You can't add a square foot because you're not going to build this little private parking space. And in doing so, I don't think it's very unintentional for when we did the moratorium. But what it means is the TDRs then really have no value. And if they don't have any value, there's a disconnect between the community's, I think, very strong value of historic buildings in our downtown and architecture, and that the floor area bonus, TDR, whatever we want to call it, was created and almost, I look at it as like a partnership of, hey, the community wants this. We're willing to help offset the cost and expense of maintaining, restoring. We want those buildings to be, but with this interim ordinance, it's robbed the values. So I just wanted, didn't intend to bring it up today, but it was on this call last night. And since y'all are kind of the historic gurus, I just wanted to let you know, it's not anything today, but it'll be going back to council, I think, in the fall, after going to PTC on many other factors related to that piece. But I wanted to make you guys aware of this. Hopefully it's something they can fix. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Chair Willis, that concludes oral communications.
Mike, so do we have any changes, additions, or deletions? Nothing. So we're going to stick with that. And is there any reason we need to go through our schedule at all? I think nothing I can think of. Anybody? Nope.
Chair Willis, I did send the dates I'm going to be absent to Amy and Myrna. So my part of the record is
Thank you.
set.
So moving on to 526 Waverly.
We have Daniel Condit, who will present the PowerPoint, I believe. I'm chatting with her at the moment.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Amy, thanks for the introduction. Hi, I will go ahead and share my screen. Give me one moment. Well, thank you all for being here today. I will go ahead and confirm. Can everyone see the screen? All right, wonderful. All right, let me start at the beginning. So we are here for 526 Waverly today. They are, it was brought before the board for a current minor AR application and major HR application for exterior modifications. Locally known, and let me just see that this is on the right. There we go. Sorry. Locally known as Palo Alto's Sport Shop and Toy World for nearly 90 years, the site is a Category 2 resource on the city's local inventory. The property was also found individually significant within a local context under Criteria 3 for its Spanish colonial revival and commercial design. Its association is with the famous Burge Clark, and the period of significance is in 1927, the year of its construction. The application is for, as we were saying, minor staff level architectural review and the major historic review, and that is for the exterior improvements, but also for the seismic and historic bonus floor area to be a future sender site. The applicant does not plan to use any of the bonus floor area on site. It should be noted that prior to this application in 2017, the front facade was restored through the processing of a minor architectural review and major historic review application to allow for the facade restoration. The city's historic consultant, Page and Turnbull, found the project compliant with the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Restoration in the analysis. From the restoration, the City Council reclassified the commercial building from a Category 3 to a Category 2. And is now Category 2 on the city's local inventory. In the application, the project did not include any changes to the floor plan at that time. The applicant is still currently, the application is still currently under review for the compliance with the zoning code. And we have brought this before the HRB to provide some recommendations and regarding the proposed alterations specific to compliance with the Secretary of the Interior Standards. The project scope includes the removal of a single-story URM rear addition. This addition was not designed by Burge Clark, and although described as a secondary character-defining feature in Page and Turnbull's SOIS analysis, the overall removal of the addition will still result in the compliance with the standards, as outlined in the staff report and in Attachment A. Page and Turnbull did recommend that a portion of the wood railing interior of the building at the east of the mezzanine, adjacent to where the new ramp is to be installed, be retained. The applicant although the applicant did not have to incorporate this change, they did choose to. The project would still overall be found compliant according to Page and Turnbull's analysis by not retaining this, but they have incorporated that in the C2 plans that you can see in Attachment B. This is a photo of the existing conditions. That is the single-story addition. The project plans propose the removal of that single-story addition that we can see here. Some of the improvements that will be made is the installation of a new fenced rear patio shade structure. The patio will be enclosed by a 6-foot tall metal fence with a stucco clad wall and metal gate, a 1-story metal frame shade structure, a new ADA ramp, new planters and landscaping within the planters. There will be a new trash enclosure. And on the facade itself, there'll be new bifolding doors that we can see on the next screen. There will also be the applicant's signage right at the back there. It should, so as we were talking about earlier in 2017, that the front facade restoration was done. In those plans, the applicant did note in a detail that any repair or damage to the cement plaster would blend the texture and surface to match the adjacent surface in kind and paint all new and existing cement plaster. This project was approved with the condition that prior to the cement plaster work commencing, the applicant would contact staff to arrange a Historic Resources Board subcommittee visit to review the approved proposed cement plaster and the texture samples and color brush out. This approach may be something that the board would like to do similar to this application prior to building permit approval by staff. This is a photo of their material sample board, so we can actually go back to this if you would like. And we have a line of sight diagram provided by the applicant demonstrating that the new penthouse elevator shaft and the rooftop equipment won't be visible from the public right away. The front facade will remove a non-historic door that's central to the main entry. And you can see that the new door will be fully glazed and very similar to what was there prior. The in-page internals review of the most recent resubmittal, which include the voluntary structural upgrade, the following recommendations were made, which are listed here. In the next stage, staff will continue reviewing the architectural review and processing the application for compliance with the zoning code. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation. We do have the applicant here to provide a presentation.
Thank you.
Chair Willis, I just wanted to let you know that we have one public speaker for this item.
Okay, so let's at the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So let's listen to the applicant now.
Hi, my name is Tracy. I am with the architect. I'm the one of the project managers. We also have Daniela here, who's the other project manager, as well as Ken, who is the owner of he represents the business owner, sorry, Blue Dot, he's with Blue Dot. And I think that Danielle really covered all of the things that we would want to speak to in this presentation, but we do have, I think, maybe some additional visuals if anybody is interested in seeing a little bit more detail about what exactly we're proposing. I can maybe just walk through some of those items.
I think if you have things that relate directly to the historic building, I think that would be great, but otherwise I think we're good.
Okay, I think most of what we would, unless you have, I guess, specific questions, most of our presentation speaks to the proposed project. But we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Chair Willis, I have some questions actually about the additions, not the historic building. If you'd like to discuss the materials on the back of the building,
Sure.
I'd be interested in hearing more about that.
Sure, let me just share the screen. So let me skip forward to that. So just, I guess, a plan for context. So the original, this is the footprint of the original addition. And then all of the proposed addition occurs in that within that same footprint. And so what you're looking at here is that what we're proposing is a steel fence that would be painted or powder coated. The walls would be coated in stucco, which would be, I think we've called it out as a smooth steel troweled stucco. But of course, if it needs to be painted to match the building stucco, that is an easy change for us to make. And then what you're seeing here on the trellis or the proposed pergola is a painted steel with Douglas fir wood slats. And so here's just an elevation view of that. You can see the building in the background. Currently it's painted, but it is board form concrete. So we would propose to expose the existing concrete, remove the paint to expose the concrete. These are just some elevations. I'll move forward to the material board. So what we're looking at here is sort of a dark painted steel that the existing building has some wrought iron details on the front elevation. So the painted steel would hopefully complement those details. That's the intention. The Douglas fir, we would, once it's installed, it has a little bit of a kind of a grayish hue to it once it's treated. Obviously, we have concrete on the patio on the ground. Number 4 is aluminum. That's really speaking to the windows that we're proposing to install, which would be within the patio, so they wouldn't be visible to the public right-of-way, but those would also be a dark powder-coated aluminum. We have, as I mentioned, stucco on the walls. And then I think the only other materials on here are the glazing. Number 7 here is the existing, reflects the existing board form concrete, and then asphalt in the parking area. So it's the material palette we think is a fairly, we thought about it in relation to the existing building, and we feel it complements the existing building.
Thank you for that description. I was trying to understand from the plans whether the footprint of this new space was going to be enclosed and have a roof, but it appears now that I can see this particular detail you have up on the screen, that it's really open, and it's the metal wall and the short stucco wall. I think it's short at any rate.
Yes,
Just sit on the same footprint as the current concrete block. It's not concrete block, tile wall. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I would mention also that the fence detail, we are proposing a sort of diamond shaped fence that was actually, the inspiration for that was kind of a detail that we've seen before in some California missions. So it's a little, we chose steel because it would just be more durable and require less maintenance.
Sure. So the reason I'm asking these questions is it's the differentiation and compatibility issues that we're addressing. I think this is nicely differentiated, but as you just described, compatible with the older part of the building. Now, this is the rear facade, but in this building, and actually on that block, all of the rear facades of those buildings are exposed by the alleyway, which is frequently used by pedestrians, including myself occasionally.
Yes,
So thank you for your careful detail in this.
thank you.
Do we have further questions for the applicant? Okay, I know I should be able to tell this from the plans, but is the ramp inside the enclosure or out?
It is within, so what we have, let's see, let me go walk you to the plan. So there's the fence is on the exterior side of the ramp, and you would actually walk into this gate here. And there's a wall that separates the ramp from the patio. So there are some kind of layers of privacy within the plan.
Thank you.
And there's, oh, sorry. And there's also planter behind the fence with the thought that we would have a little bit of just greenery to liven up that portion of the project. Because
Thank
we're
you.
also aware that we had been told that many people use this back alley. So we really wanted to kind of provide something that might help activate it.
So comments?
I just had a quick question. I was just curious to know what sort of the use, who the tenant is, and is it retail or is it a food service, and what they're going to be using that back space for?
It's a retail, they're a furniture store. So Blue Dot, they have their own line of furniture that they actually design and fabricate and sell. And so the back patio is going to be used for a display of their outdoor furniture collection.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Comments?
I have a question for Ms. Condit about the staff report. So I notice on page 17 in the discussion, in paragraph 2, it says the changes proposed would not result in a relisting to category 3. I'm very interested in two things. One, how do you make a determination like that? And what happened with the 567 Hale Street project? That's a category 2 building that's going to become a category 0 building after the proposed changes. So I'm wondering why this discussion has that category change issue in it. We didn't have that last meeting.
That it may have been actually, and because of that last meeting, to be just a little more clear, since it was more of a discussion in our last meeting that we can circle back to. But in this report, I was looking at the definitions of category 2 and that it's a major building that doesn't have major modifications in the sense that it is a secondary character defining feature. And that Page and Turnbull's report did find that overall that the addition wasn't, was not designed by Birch Clark and was something that could be removed and not affect the category listing of this site.
Okay, I'm perfectly in agreement with that. I think this is a situation where the secondary materials that are being removed don't particularly add to the overall history of the building. And in fact, they're really dangerous. But I guess my problem is that this is an important consideration when we're looking at adding or changing historic buildings. And while I don't think that this has any impact on the category 2 status of this building, I'm really concerned about the Hale Street project. So I don't want to bring that in here. I'm just raising this question because I think we missed it last time. And I think we ought to come back to it and look at it again. Thanks. Thank you for clarifying that.
Other comments? Well, I have one. I wish everything we saw is great. I think it's really respectful. I'm so happy that this building is maintaining its historic character. I think the addition is very respectful of the building and distinctive, which I like to see. It's obvious what the historic building is. I think it's just a lovely job, and I'm so glad we'll get to go in there in the future and enjoy the space. And I hope you'll add a few adult toys as a token to its past. I think it would be great. Thank you. So any further comments or suggestions, or do I have a motion?
I guess we do have one question regarding the interior railing, which we're proposing to keep at this point. If over the course of construction, we find that it's causing a safety hazard or there are any sort of issues with it, is there any flexibility with regard to the interior railing? Because I know right now it's lower than is code compliant, so we will have to find a way to make it, safe. So I guess that would just be our one question. Obviously, the exterior, we're, not proposing any changes to. So that's really just as the applicant, that's our only sort of concern with regard to the historic components.
I think it's a perfect opportunity to use the historic building code. If you do actually feel that it's unsafe, that's another issue. But having been in that building multiple times, I've never felt that. And I've had young kids with me. I know it's been a long time, but I did. And I think that we as a city need to learn to use our historic building code. It's in place for just this kind of thing. So I hope if you need us to work with you on the building department to enable this, we would love to do that. And I hope you will not cave to the generic and maintain its historic character. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to second Carolyn's thoughts and statements. Also be cognizant of the fact that if you don't make let me back up. Don't make the mistake that was made at, I think, 465 University Avenue, where during construction, they found problems with the materials and they basically took all of the historic materials off the building and then decided that they wanted to talk to somebody. So just do it in advance. I'm sure we can work with you. We as the board and the city can work with it. And I also hope that you can maintain it, even though it's low. It's it's the history of the building, and it shows how we have, the fact that it's too low to meet current standards shows how building has evolved. And that's one of the reasons we want to preserve these buildings, so we can see the difference between yesterday and today.
Great. Thank you for clarifying.
If there's nothing further, do we have a motion to?
And we just have one public speaker for this item.
Oh, thank you for
Yeah.
reminding me. I apologize. Okay. I'm sorry.
Our first speaker is John Shank.
Well, I just wanted to speak in favor of this. Obviously, we started this process back in probably 2015, pursuing the building, and it's just fantastic for the record, for the Thwaites family that's been so involved in Palo Alto for 140 years, to work with the Hoffacker family and they wanted to know if the Thwaites would like to buy the building from them, and of course, at no discount, but to kind of hand it off from one family to the other. And then for us to be able to work with you all and staff, and Amy was great, to do the historic renovation of the facade, and just how that, we always try to find opportunities to enhance the downtown and do these kinds of things. And I'm excited to see this URM go away. I know y'all are too. And every day I happen to work on the other side of the alley that's behind the former Blue Chalk CBRE, former, I guess now, but building the back of that facade is the same as this, minus the URM. And I think it's fun, and the architecture is neat. So I'm excited to see that come back. Blue Dot's a fantastic company. We got hit with the retail freeze, if you will, with COVID and everything else, as we started to try to look for new tenants for the building. And then Blue Dot found us. They wanted this building. They wanted their furniture store to be in this historic building. It's just fantastic. So I'm happy we're finally here today. And the only thing I'm going to push back a little on, or just raise, I guess, is related to the interior railings. The concern I have is we're committed to the same goals. The tenant is even. My concern is after this process, which by the way, it's been a very long time getting here. And for the tenant, it's a very big deal, trying to get a building permit, if you will, right? From beginning to end. And now they go through, they finalize all their structural plans, get into the building department, go through and find there's a code problem from a building perspective with the railings. And then what do? Go back, call Amy, try to get on agenda, come back. It can be months. That kills deals of how do we get around these kinds of things, and knowing if it's too low, it's too low. Anyway, and as the owner, I worry, and I think they would worry about, well, what are the liabilities? What do the insurance companies think? Is it, all these kinds of things. We want it to be historic. I just worry that, and as codes change, what happens in 3 years, and there's a code change with railings, and anyway, so I would ask for flexibilities there, so we don't have to go through the whole process to come back to you guys on that kind of a building code problem that may come up. So that's my only thing. And thank you again for all that you guys do.
Thank you, John. There should not be any reason to come back to us. We have a historic building code in place. We don't tend to use it very often, but the reason it's there is for just this kind of thing. If you feel that railing's unsafe, that's a different thing. But my perception of that's not my recollection. So it should just be a simple thing through the building department that the code that applies to this building is the historic building code. And when you do new construction within it, yes, that is subject to the existing building code. But the fact that, are you adding railing to are you mimicking the existing railing that would be?
I believe there is, yes.
So
Well, the new railing will be differentiated from the existing railing.
Okay. So personally, I don't think there should be a problem, that it should be something that's just handled in the building permit in a very normal manner.
That would be fantastic. My concern is we kind of go through this and get a decision from you guys. And when the code's different, and I'm thinking not the historic, I mean, as the codes evolve, as they always do, and then we get caught with, well, to make this change, we have to go through the building planning and HRB process on a tenant improvement matter. And anyway, that's the concern I have, is just as we all go forward, there's well, if you touch the railings, you have to go to HRB, and then it's like, what do we do? Because most retailers would say pass because of the time involved.
As you probably aware, we don't deal with interiors on a regular basis.
And that's where this, only because this was brought in as Page and Turble's like recommendation, I thought, well, in the future, does that become a hook where staff is caught with, now we have to go to HRB because was addressed here. And that's I don't know if I'm off a cliff here, but I can see where, well, a planner looking at it and thinking, we have to go to HRB because it was this specific recommendation today.
No.
That was it. Thank you.
But we thank you. I mean, it's just really nice. And Thorts has been a really good partner in preservation in Palo Alto, not just on this building, but
thank you for that.
we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So sure,
Go ahead.
I've been doing, you first.
Oh, I just see that you do have a photo of the railings, because I hadn't really studied that, but this is on page, oh my God, I need my glasses, 29. There is a photo of the railings, and it looks like it's probably a height, and there might be more than 4 inches between so I've had projects like that before. I mean, these are really character defining something in the interior that's really definitely worth saving. A very simple detail that you could do is keep the existing railing, but in front of it, just put just a simple glass railing that that you can see right through. It has the right height. It's completely solid. It's a very contemporary detail. A lot of people are doing glass railings now, but you could just put a simple glass railing in front of that, not touch the existing wood, but put a simple glass railing in front of it. That could be an easy solution that would solve a lot of problems, because I do see the safety issue of the
The
tenant.
design, yeah.
So, but hey, we really appreciate you bringing it up, because I think there are solutions.
Fair.
Just wanted to add that.
No,
So,
thank you.
Chair Willis, I'd like to suggest that we use a subcommittee to deal with any of the issues like this that come up on the project, because the subcommittee can move faster and doesn't have to come back before the full board unless the subcommittee feels that's really significant. There's a significant change that needs to be addressed by the whole board. So I don't know if we want to set that up now, or if Amy, maybe you could tell me whether or not we could do this later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think right now we have a condition of approval to say, because we don't have architectural review application, ready to sign off on, but we could put a condition that says, any items related to, and be specific on the exterior, would be something that we can handle at a subcommittee. I don't know if something on the interior needs to have a subcommittee. I mean, because again, it's not a Secretary of Interior Standards thing. It's more what the HRB would like, right? It's a recommendation. But is that what you're saying? You would like a subcommittee to look at the interior railing?
No, not really. It's that I'm trying to respond to John's concern
Sure.
about getting stuck back in the approval loop and being able to create a situation where the HRB could make a determination quickly, and it can really only be done with the subcommittee.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always possible to convene 2 members of the HRB, or even 3, without being a quorum problem. In fact, we did it for this very building, to go out and take a look at the
I remember
paint on the building.
the tile.
And the tile,
Yeah.
the paint color and the tile.
Right.
And so that's always a possibility, but usually you would put that in as a condition of approval. And it would usually be for a specific thing and not just whatever comes up. It's a little bit of a weird condition to write, but yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that rail is part of the character defining feature of this building,
Yeah.
inside or outside. That's what makes this a category 2 building,
Right.
not just who built it and who designed it. So this is that tension between what we can do as a board in order to preserve those features.
Yeah.
So I think that rail, losing that, losing the rail might challenge the category 2 listing.
See. So
This is the same thing.
you can put it in your motion, and as you're making motion related to the Secretary of Interior Standards compliance and any recommendation you have, put it in the motion, and we can put it in the architectural review approval letter.
Good, thank you.
Sorry, I see that board member McKinnon has his hand raised.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, I just had a question on the ADA ramp in the back of the building. And is that the only ADA access point to the structure?
The front door is also accessible. So it's accessible from the rear entrance through the patio. And that's actually where the accessible parking space is located, as well as through the front door. And we are also installing an elevator. So the building will be fully accessible. We have ramps. There's some, just because of the existing nature of the building, there are some different height levels at the second floor, and we have ramps connecting all of those levels.
Okay, the point I wanted to make is that it was taught to me by Paige and Turnbull, actually, that ADA access should be in the same door entry that a non-handicapped person would use. So I'm glad to hear that you're confirmed that the front door is fully ADA accessible.
Yes.
That really is, the compliance should be that you don't put an ADA person in a position where they feel that they're compromise and have to go around to the back and use like an alley type of access. It should be treated like a normal person.
Right, and that's, I think that was actually a topic of conversation with Blue Dot as well, just wanting to make sure that the entire floor plan is ADA accessible. So we, that's why even though we probably have more ramps than our code required to ensure that the building is fully ADA accessible.
Thank you for the confirmation.
I also just wanted to speak to one point about the railing. I will just share my screen just to make sure that this maybe doesn't, that everybody is fully aware of this. So with the railing, you can see at the second floor that the railing, so this is the existing railing here, and then there's also an existing railing along here, and we're removing a portion of it to provide that ADA ramp. However, you can see in the original drawing that the portion that we are removing is not original, because at one point there was a stair at that location. So I just wanted to be clear that the portion of the railing that we're proposing to remove is not original.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that we recommend to the Director of Planning and Development Services that the proposed
I'll second.
All in favor? Do we need it? Oh, how about discussion?
I would like to see the addition of some kind of language that will capture all the character defining features of the building. Because I think the interior is important, even though it's the purview of this board is, it's not clear whether we have purview on the inside, but I think that the picture that we just saw of that railing and the beams and the interior ceiling, those are features that make this building what it is. I mean, and what makes this building notable and why we want to preserve it. So I would, let's see, like to respectfully request the addition of.
Do you want to make an amendment, propose an
Well,
amendment?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to do this in a way that doesn't make this overly complicated. So I guess I would like to propose an amendment that if the railing and beams are going to be changed, that there be some kind of HRB review of that. Now that can be I don't care how that happens. Subcommittee is my preference, but something to that effect. Or to that effect, actually.
Do we have a second for Dave's somewhat rambling motion?
I have a question. Are we authorized to make that kind of recommendation on the interior?
I would say it's not our purview.
I think it's a character defining feature and that's what we do here. So I don't know.
But when it comes to I'll weigh in, this is Amy. When it comes to a building that is, seeking rehabilitation and bonuses and such, I mean, I think, and going through discretionary review, I think you can provide a recommendation and we'll consider it as we move forward with the architectural review application and approval. What I would say though about this is you're making a friendly amendment, that's the wording. And then the original motion maker would need to accept that as a friendly amendment or not. So it's up to you, Board Member Heinrich.
So I'd like to propose an amendment to your motion that interior character defining features that are going to be changed be reviewed by the HRB or an HRB subcommittee.
I accept.
Do we have a second for our motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay.
Point
Let's
of
have a
order, I
little
believe,
bit.
sorry, I believe Alyssa was the seconder.
I'll second.
Okay, do we have discussion of our amended? It does seem like we need to clean it up. Can somebody, Margaret, are you working on that? You know, my thought is that we really need to start using the historic building code. We're missing an opportunity. This is exactly what it's for. I think, you know, I would like to see the amendment reference the historic building code.
Might I weigh in? We have this trouble in many other venues and boards and commissions. So one solution could be, you know, consider. If you use the word consider and that kind of thing, then it's not a hard, you know, it's something that they will put earnest effort in. Staff will put earnest effort working with the applicant to work through, you know, have a meeting with the building official, et cetera, and see how using the historic building code, and maybe there's another solution like the glass that we can come to in a collaborative setting.
I'm assuming all of that would be true and not trying to make this difficult, but I'd like to make a stronger statement about preserving the character defining features. I'm confident that's going to happen. It's not that I think it's not going to happen, but I want to have some review if there's a problem. I don't want to make it complicated. You know, I was on the other side of this for 40 years, so I'm very sympathetic to how complicated this can become. But without review, then I don't know why we're here. So, and certainly this is not the first time that this property has come before the board, and the first project they did was excellent. So I'm confident that this is going to work. I just want to get in the record something that says that character defining features need, if they're going to be changed, they should be reviewed by HRB subcommittee. I don't think that's a problem.
So let me know if this is if this translation, consider using the historic building code regarding the railing. If the railing and beams will be changed, what you said, needs a review by HRB or HRB subcommittee. So, you know, that's a either or, and is that,
Well,
who decides that?
I think that's the applicant would, and their architectural team would decide that with Page and Turnbull looking at any changes. Maybe that's all it needs. I'm troubled by the word should, because there's nothing in that word that guarantees that there's going to be a review.
I don't think I said should, I said consider using. the
Should,
historic building
you know.
code. And that I took from Chair Willis about use of the historic. I mean, I think the best we can do is have them consider using that.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think it makes sense for them to use it. And I support that. If they don't, that rail goes. Like, you know, I mean, I don't think you get to choose the historic building code for this piece of the building. I may be wrong about that. Actually, I see Ms. Bremer is raising her hand here.
Well, I mean, I think that for us to preserve the railing, I think that's definitely something that we can do. The suggestion about the glass is something that we can incorporate. I would just want to ensure, and I think that we're all, you know, we're all very respectful of this building, and we recognize the historic nature of it and want to respect all of those features. And I think that's one of the reasons why Blue Dot actually wanted to be in this building in the first place, is because it has, you know, it has character. It's not just a generic building that you can find anywhere. So I do think that there's a desire to preserve all of those. I guess I would just want to ensure that Over the course of construction, obviously, I think we all know that unexpected things can happen. And we would, we do, as I mentioned, we do want to preserve all of the historic features. But we would just, I think, want to ensure that if anything comes up during construction, that it could be resolved expediently. We don't want to get into a situation where we have to kind of stop work because we need a determination on, we need to go back before the full board to make a determination on certain items. So that would be, I guess we would request that you would take that into consideration.
So backtracking, I'm wondering if we want a motion that references the historic building code, but also sets an avenue for review if unexpected demolition comes up. So if there was a subcommittee of 2 that the architect could call if there was any issue or any question, and they would have our proxy. Okay, Margaret.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should be grateful that our applicant is even discussing it with us, because it wasn't even part of the, it wasn't really part of our purview for today. So thank you for, bringing it up and letting us share our thoughts on it. And I do have confidence that they will, I guess, do the right thing, because I do believe that it does give character to the interior, and obviously that's one of the reasons why they wanted to lease this building. But I think, I just simplified the motion. I don't want to overstep or anything, but I just kind of wrote something to simplify it, and we could just say, I move to approve the project exterior alterations as proposed. So we've approved the exterior with strong recommendations to protect the interior character defining features, namely the railings and the beams, and encourage the applicant to use the historic building code to protect those items if needed. Kind of simplifies it and it divides it. Like, we approve the project as presented, but we're concerned about these interior elements that are really outside of our review.
Well stated.
Thank you. Go. Do you approve this?
You turned your mic off.
Yes, I approve the changes that Margaret made.
And do we have a second for a revised motion?
Yes, I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I think the only thing I would say is that we could have a subcommittee that would be accessible to the architects on a more immediate basis should any questions come up. Margaret.
Does this building have like a plaque or something that says that it's a Burge Clark? I always think of plaques. I don't know why. Like, we could have a nice plaque that says this building was originally designed by Burge Clark in this year, and it was renovated in, what was it, 2017? I just feel like I know it's off topic, but I just feel like we need those to remind ourselves of these. And that would be a Palo Alto thing. That wouldn't be anything that has to do with the applicant. I think it would be that's something that I've talked about before, but
I think it's a lovely thought.
Off topic,
And
sorry.
maybe when we have our Preservation Month discussion, we could discuss that.
Just so you know, Past gives out plaques for buildings, and they're doing their listing right now. So possibly we could add that to their list.
So can we call a vote on this one?
Yes.
Ta-da.
Board Member Bauer,
Yes.
Board Member Eggleston Sislovich,
Yes.
Board Member Henrik,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pease absent, Chair Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Weimer,
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
And thank you very much for bringing this to us in such a lovely state. And we're really glad that it's fallen into good hands. And we look forward to visiting in the future. Thank you. And let's move on to our study session on review and recommend improvements to our outreach materials. Improvements to our outreach materials. Not really sure I'm aware of our outreach materials, including incentives for rehabilitation and consider ways Palo Alto can participate in Historic Preservation Month, which we've already started. Amy, you want to take us? Yes.
Sharing the screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we have on the agenda today as our second item, outreach. And I have a quick presentation just to cover the topic. We have historic preservation web pages, and I have a bit of a presentation to share with the public, most importantly, because I think you all have seen our historic preservation web pages, just to help everyone see what we do have in the way of incentives in particular. Another topic of outreach is handouts. Last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we talked about the review process bulletin and the need to update that. I know board member Wimmer has talked about a handout that she prepared a while back, and it was providing an update with a new logo. That would be a paper copy and also could be included on our webpage after full review. And then we have what are the ways that Palo Alto can participate in Historic Preservation Month, which is, you know, another form of outreach and celebration of historic preservation. So just noting here, and we'll talk about all of those further in my presentation and after. Just here, just a note that the Cpf Conference has opened their registration, and the theme is opening doors. So we do support board members who wish to attend. It's a virtual online conference followed by tours in California. And then finally, I will be coming back next month in April with the draft CLG report, because we need another annual report to work on. And so we'll be back there. And this goes to the State Office of Historic Preservation in May, which happens to be Historic Preservation Month. All right, so just to do a quick overview of our historic preservation web pages. Now, these are on the department web page. So the Planning and Development Services has a historic preservation web pages, and they're very extensive. The problem is they're very buried too, and not very many people know to go there. So one concept is to provide a link to that homepage for all of that on the Historic Resources Board webpage. That would help people to get to the right place, because the Historic Resources Board webpage only has bylaws, regulations, work plans, and the upcoming agendas. So that, I think, would, you know, go some distance. We could also have a bit of a blurb on there about, you know, what this other link that you're going to will provide for you. So areas of work. These are all of the links that get you to other pages on the department's historic preservation web pages. So you can see how extensive. We have all of these items that are links. I'm going to go through them now just to show you okay, this is all that's on there. So many more things than what I'm going to show you. Actually, I'm going to focus on incentives now. But all of these links go to full multiple pages about the program. So historic preservation incentives. This is, again, because we're looking at what the council recommended or approved on Monday, was to proceed with the outreach process to place on our inventory those properties already deemed eligible and sent to the state for National Register and California Register. So having a set of incentives known to the public, and especially property owners that are in this category, will be very important. So we have the building code, we have the zoning code, and we have other items. This is the drop downs from the Historic Preservation Incentives homepage. Each one of these
Amy,
has,
can we go
yeah,
back to that
sure.
last one? I had a question.
this one here.
So, yeah. The local development incentives apply only to locally designated resources listed in the Palo Alto Historic Inventory. And since our inventory is so out of date, I believe we actually have National Register properties that are not listed on our inventory. Is that true?
I know that we have National Register eligible properties that are not on our inventory, but you're saying other
I-
properties that are actually listed on the National Register that aren't on our inventory.
Maybe not, but
I mean, that's true if you consider that we have a National Register Green Meadow, Eichler neighborhood, and that is not on our inventory. I mean, those properties individually are not listed on our inventory, and neither is the district itself, a local district. It's a national district.
okay.
So I'll continue. So this is the, again, these are the categories. Each one of these has links within. So I'll start with the first one, building code incentives. We were just talking about that. Use of the historic building code allows flexible alternatives and some other things. So alternative solutions. This is all right straight from the webpage. So there are many, many of these, and anytime we want to go back to this and talk about this, fine. Then there's the zoning code, which is Title 18. These are the incentives that planners are more familiar with than the building side. And so we know about these. The historic, the home improvement exception, we bumped up to be applicable to category 3s and 4s as well as 1s and 2s, so that they could get that extra floor area above the maximum in their districts. And this is for homes. Then of course, there's quite a few incentives for floor area, bonus floor area, transferable development rights when it's a commercial downtown property. You can transfer that bonus to another property or use it on site. What you can't do is transfer it to another historic property, but there's processes for that, and we support all of that. There's other exemptions and exceptions and listed on the webpage. Here are more of them. This talks about the transferable development rights. So there's several areas in the code that provide incentives if you're on our inventory as a category 1, 2, and many for 3 and 4s. Then we have our SOFA plan, which is a section. It's basically its own zoning code. And it has, similar to the downtown, these exemptions and bonus floor areas. Then we have all of these comp plan policies that talk about streamlining and such. This is too much to go through right now, but just know it's there. The subdivision code. So this comes up when people ask, well, what about SB9? Historic properties can't do SB9 subdivisions, but they can do a flag lot, even when flag lots are not allowed in the R1. If there's a historic property, we've had several of those. If you have 2 historic homes and you want to split the lot and make 2 lots, one actually could only have to have 1 historic home. The other home can be non-historic, and you can go through a lot split and even do a small lot if that's a condition that exists. So we do have the ability to do lot splits for historic properties. That's been on the books for over 10 years, I think.
And Amy, let me just clarify. So historic home in that sentence is any home on our inventory?
Historic homes would be those on our inventory. So if you're merely eligible, you're not on our inventory, and therefore this doesn't apply. So this would be an incentive to be on our inventory so that you could come through and get a lot split
Does
to make a flag lot.
does this include category 3 and 4 homes as well?
Yes. Then federal tax investment credit. I'm not versed on this, but that's another page on our webpage that has links to these. And then anyways, there's a page that says want to learn more. So there's more resources on our webpage. Then just briefly, I'll just say, this is that bulletin that we discussed a couple weeks ago. So the concept is we would, this would be one of the outreach activities and on our work plan to, improve what this says. And the fact that we changed our comp plan to, and the fact that council just gave us a lift regarding an update of the inventory, we would modify this bulletin. I believe that's all I have here. Does anyone want me to go back to any of the pages to discuss outreach, or what's your pleasure, Chair Willis?
I have a question. So is there somebody in the building department that is well-versed in the historic building code, like that we should direct all of our historic projects to somebody with that working knowledge?
Well, we have a range of folks. I would say the chief building official is the person that I would go to. And then he has the ability to delegate to a consultant that might have more expertise. David Chung is our assistant building official, and he, he's also overseeing the inspection staff, the plans review staff, and some of those are consultants as well. So we do have the ability to have expertise in historic. And I would just go through my counterpart in the building department to get them to the right person who has bandwidth.
Thank you. Questions for Amy?
So let's go back.
Let's go back and talk. Margaret, one of the things that Amy mentioned was the brochure you're working on. Have you worked on that further?
Yes, I need to continue working on that. In fact, I have done a couple of other things that I wasn't prepared to present today, but I know that I definitely want to continue working on this outreach thing. I just need to almost put it on I think on a meeting where we don't have an applicant would be great, or one of our, I was going to say retreat meetings, not resort, retreat meetings. Resort meetings. I'm thinking about vacationing, I guess. Yeah, that we could just sort of do a deeper dive into it. I have done a couple of, in fact, I called that Pacific Grove, the historic, they have a historic association down there. And I don't know if you recall when we were talking with Christina Dykes that was here, and she was saying how they helped Pacific Grove do their historic context statement, and that everyone there wants to have their house on the historic register. And I was like, wow, I got to talk to those people. How do they do it? Like, what's their secret? So actually I had a nice conversation. I'd have to look into my notes to, maybe I'll write a little memo about it, but about the guy's name. But they do something very similar. They have a very similar thing like PAST. And then they have, a city regulated board that reviews projects, which is very identical to what we have. But I think their residents are different, have a different mindset. And there's so much history there, but the people are they want to have their house on the register, and they want that plaque on their, next to their front door. So I just think it's a different demographic. But I thought it was really interesting because I felt like he had some magical secret, but I don't think he really does. But they pride themselves on it. They really do. So maybe we could just.
So I guess my question would be, do you think there's a chance we could get some of these materials out by Preservation Month?
Yeah. I just have to have a deadline. I'm very
You want
deadline driven.
a subcommittee?
Sure. Yeah.
I think that would be a good idea. Does anybody want to work with Margaret on, what are we calling this?
An outreach committee. How about that? Preservation Outreach Committee.
Preservation Outreach. Okay.
I can do it by myself. No one has to join me. It's okay.
I'm available.
Okay.
I'll back you up. Um,
I would be happy to help out too.
Okay.
Perfect. So the other thing I think we really need to talk about, well, okay, let's do Preservation Month. The one that, I did not get, I think tours would be hard to pull together. I am going to talk to Pass, see if maybe, but I'm not holding out hope at this point. But there's the original brochure for Professorville Walking Tour that's rather dense and interesting. And it was actually produced by the Historic Resources Board back in the day. And I think a republication for Preservation Month would be an easy thing, and we could put it in City Hall and the libraries, and wouldn't be a lot of money. And I think it would be a good place to start and at least have some presence. The other thing is that I'm wondering if we have anything to add to the Santa Clara Valley. I can't remember what they called it, but the preservation group that's forming locally. Santa Clara, is it the county? Yes, that one. I'm wondering if we have anything that we want to add to their awards program.
I'll say that they had reached out to see if we had any notable historic rehabilitation project that we would like to have them feature. I don't know if they're putting something on a wall or a PowerPoint together. I'm not sure. I'd have to reach back to that person who reached out. But if we have a building that we would like highlighted, a project that the HRB has looked at, I mean, 526 comes to mind, but there could be others. Yeah.
So what comes to mind, David?
Oh, Lanning Chateau is one. Of course, the project we looked at today, we looked at 5 years ago. That's another one. Off the top of my head, of course, I can't remember them, but in my term on the board, we've reviewed and seen a number of really significant renovations of historic buildings. President Hotel is going to be one it was controversial, but it's going to be a really stellar example of renovation. It's going to bring the hotel back to pretty much the way it was before it was converted into an apartment building. Let's see, Stanford Theater. It's an astounding example of renovation. Long time ago. Let me see, I just got to mentally walk down University Avenue. What's that? I don't think that's a good example.
Okay, maybe somebody needs to reach out. And maybe rather than doing individual, maybe we could do kind of a walk down University Avenue, because if it's just a visual presentation, I think we could do a really lovely one of our historic buildings on University Avenue. If it's more of an awards event, I think it would be good to have a project that's actually complete rather than one that's kind of most of the way there.
It would be interesting if you have a summer intern in the planning department to just go through the last 15 years of HRB project reviews for renovation. And that's not a simple task, because I was trying to get on the website, city website, to look at past buildings and just projects, and it's very difficult. Anyway, just a list of the things that have been renovated, and basically if we reviewed them as a board, that would qualify, and then put it on the website. These are buildings that have been renovated using the Secretary of Interior standards.
I wonder if you and I could just walk down University Avenue and identify. What do you think between us?
We certainly could, but it's a bigger it's a bigger pool than that. There's Professorville has a number of houses that have been done. 365 Lincoln comes to mind as one of the first projects reviewed when I was newly appointed to the board, and it has the original water tower that was moved around on the property. it was retained. Building right next door to it, another one adjacent to that. These are old Professorville buildings. 601 Melville is another one that I remember. There's a Mabec building on Bryant and Lincoln. No, yeah, maybe. It's I think the only Mabec designed building in Palo Alto. And it was reviewed before my time. That's
Sunbonnet
ancient time.
House.
Yeah. So
Okay. Well, I don't know that we're going to resolve anything today. We do have a month. I think it would be wise to talk to the people who are actually organizing the event and see what kind of fills in. Do I have a volunteer? Okay. I'll call. Amy and I are going to get together after this and make a list of what I've committed to, because I always forget. So moving on a little bit to council's decision on Monday that agreed to, well, actually wholeheartedly endorsed our move to expand our inventory with the houses that have already been identified as National Register eligible. Okay, thank you, council. But any comments on that and any thoughts on how we should move forward?
I only want to say that this is not agendized for today, so I'm a little concerned to not get the cart before the horse. Maybe we should agendize this for an April meeting, and that will give staff some time to go through a scope of services and share that with the board for discussion.
Perfect. And does the board have any request? Well, moving on that thought, does the board have any request for what we would like to see back from council, from staff regarding adding properties to the inventory?
I have a question regarding the process. Are we having a consultant go through the current list?
Yes.
Okay.
The current list being the properties deemed eligible in the survey of the 2000 survey.
Yes.
Yes, there's a number of tasks associated with verification, and this work began with Chair Willis and some of you who volunteered to go and see, is it still standing? But I don't want to get too far into discussion on this, again, because it's not advertised for today. But I think it behooves a follow-up report to the HRB in the month of April with some robust discussion agendized on this.
Okay, I'd like to see it on the first meeting in April. I'd like to get moving on this, and show our enthusiasm.
Can I go back to the last item of discussion? Amy, on your the second slide of your presentation, you had all of those links to various preservation incentives in the city. Is that a page on the website?
Yes, I'm going to share my screen again because it'll be easier to show and tell and answer.
Sure.
So let me do
Because
that again.
I've been on the HRB website a couple of times recently.
Not on
and
the HRB website.
and actually the best way I can find anything in the city website is Google. You can't find it on their search engine.
Yeah.
Not quite
So-
sure what that search engine does.
So this is the it's a little buried, but you have to go to the Planning and Planning and Development Services Department.
Right.
And then you go down past a bunch of stuff to see planning. You click on planning and you see current planning, long-range planning, historic preservation. It's a three-legged stool. When you hit historic preservation, you get to a colorful first page that says areas of work that I'm showing here on the screen. If I'm showing right now, am I showing my screen?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
we can see it.
This is areas of work. When you click on each one of these links here, project review, preservation highlights, preservation incentives, Palo Alto inventory,
Sure.
California Register, National Register, each of these historic districts has a separate web page that you go to and explore And from those pages, there are further links. The only one I showed you today was the preservation incentives.
Right.
So this is what you see on preservation incentives, basically. A nice house, it talks here. Then you get to this menu, which each one of these, I'm only showing one active link, but each one of these is a link that shows you what I showed you today. The building code incentives, the zoning, all of that. Those
Sure.
are, this page, right? So
I'm aware of how complicated how broad the planning and development department portfolio is, but just as you just described how to get here or get to that point.
Yeah, it's varied.
It's way down there.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I'm not the best navigator of websites, but man, if it's hard for me and I'm on the board.
Yeah, that tells a lot. So this is what I propose, is that we link this start page for all of our historic preservation, which is on our department page, to the HRB page.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
Put that prominently up
Yeah.
there, please go here.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
because
You know.
when I wanted to find out things about the Historic Resources Board, that's where I started. You can get right there with Google.
Yeah.
And if this is on that page, all of our cheerful pictures are there.
Yeah.
This ought to be above that.
And further, again, because of Monday night, as one of these things, and it could be even more prominent on the HRB webpage, is a link that shows you the 2000. I had done a cut and paste of all of the, multiple pages into one page, small, but you can always make it bigger on your own computer to see what's listed and, and why, California eligible or.
Sure.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, it's going to be I'm guessing, a very popular topic coming up.
Yes.
So is our webpage design farmed out, or is that somebody in-house? That if we said we would like, if you type in search in the city of Palo Alto, if you type in preservation incentives, what do you get? Can we suggest that there are things that we would like to be able to type in to the website that would give you an easy access?
Yeah, I know that there is a farming out of a certain number of things. And each time we want to upload something, it has to go to the city manager's office for approval of each upload. So there's a process. I was going to just try it right now and see if I say hit Palo Alto Historic Preservation, does it go straight to our homepage? Because that would be
I think it does.
comforting.
I was just asking, like, if you were looking explicitly for incentives, could you easily get there without going through very many steps?
Yeah, it does go to the homepage, but let me put incentives and see what happens. Nothing like preservation incentives. Yes, it goes to that page. If somebody just knows the word incentives and put Palo Alto preservation incentives, it'll get there.
I had a conversation this past week with a local real estate agent who was under the impression that an historic designation on your house meant you could never change it.
That's a common misperception.
Yeah, and that's something we need to figure out a way to clarify.
Or make true? No.
Well, we don't want that.
I know, but I couldn't resist.
Well,
No, I mean, this is a misinformation that is damaging because there are members of the community that might stand up in front of various boards and say just that. And we need to be careful that we counter that misinformation with real information.
right.
So do we have any other thoughts on the outreach to the public generally? Shall we move on to approval of the minutes? So we have minutes from February. Do we have a motion to approve? Do we have any
I'll move-
comments or corrections first?
I'll move to approve unless there are corrections.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? And does anybody have any comments or corrections or discussion or anything? Nope. Voice vote? Okay, I mean, if we just do.
Yeah,
I'll
I'll-
conduct the vote.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Board Member Bauer,
Approved.
Board Member Eagleston Sislovich,
Approved.
Board Member Hendrick,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes,
Vice Chair Pease absent, Chair Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Weimer,
Approved.
motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Do we have any subcommittee thoughts or? No. No questions, comments, or announcements? I think we kind of slipped those in there along the way. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Are we good?
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.